Yo, what's up, y'all? It's JD and James back with another live stream. And today, as you guys can see in the title, we're going to be talking about rejection and how you can have the last laugh. And you guys might be thinking that we're talking about the rejection. Maybe you go up and you try to approach a woman, or you go up and you're trying to go on a date with a girl and she rejects you or whatever it may be. But that's actually not necessarily what we had in store for this live. I mean, we can touch on that as well, because one thing about rejection in all aspects of life is all connected to in a certain way. So the way we were kind of thinking about it, at least James kind of brought up this subject, is that, let's say for instance, you're aspiring to get into a certain field, or you're aspiring to work for a certain company, and you put in your application. You might even have an interview, you might even have a second or a third interview, but you end up getting rejected by this company. How is it that you can actually have the last laugh? And for me, one of the examples that I came up with is that we can get rejected even when there's nobody else around. One way that I feel like rejection is big, as far as it plays a big role in my life, is when it comes down to physical pursuits. And it might be with calisthenics, it might be with running, or whatever it may be. We might be aspiring to run a 10 miles with under 8 minutes per mile, and we come up short. That's a form of rejection. We might, for me, I don't know if you guys have been monitoring my progress, or my pursuit that I had going on for a while, which was the 20-piece handstand push-ups. And I got rejected by the 20-piece handstand push-ups. Shit, probably within a month that I was going after it, I probably got rejected by the 20-piece handstand push-up maybe 500 times. But at the end of the day, I got the last laugh because I finally hit the 20-piece. So that's kind of what we're talking about. I'm going to hand it over to James in terms of what he thinks about, or how he thinks going about getting that last laugh. How can you go about getting that last laugh? And also, guys, if you guys are just joining into the live stream, go ahead and hit the like button. That way the live stream can get out there for everybody. And but go ahead, James.
Yeah, no, I love this one because this is kind of like maybe a personal philosophy of mine, but I feel like you can make up for, I guess you could say, errors of your past, and you can atone for all the mistakes of your past by basically outdoing whatever pursuit it was that rejected you. So, one of the things I thought about was, a couple years ago, I was applying for jobs, and I remember I really wanted this one job, and I didn't end up getting it. But then, sure enough, about a month and a half later, I ended up getting a different job, and this one was better than the other one, basically on every dimension. It paid more, it was more flexible, it was, a job I was going to enjoy more. And I was kind of thinking about it, how that initial job, well, it stung at first when I didn't get it. I realized that in the end, they were the people that actually missed out on my talent. And I was actually the one that ended up making out better because of that rejection. And I think this happens in our life at many different stages. It could be a complete pursuit that might flat out reject you. Maybe your goal is to be an NFL player, and you ended up getting rejected by football, but then you end up going down a different path, and you end up actually producing a career that would actually be far superior to even being that professional football player that you were aiming at. And, I think a lot of times there's so many different things out there that are waiting for us past whatever rejection or failure. And, when you keep on putting your foot on the gas, a lot of times life is going to show you, like, yeah, it would have been a huge mistake if you would have wound up at that job you thought you wanted. You might have thought, oh yeah, this company gave me this great opportunity, but realistically, the worst thing that could have possibly happened for you was for that company to accept you. So
Another thing I would like to add to that is that a lot of times we can't see the forest through the trees. So, we think that this job that we're applying for, or this, movement that we're going after, or this college that we're trying to get into, is the end all be all. But sometimes we actually need to get rejected in life to kind of recenter ourselves and become a better version of ourselves. Sometimes it's not necessarily the job that's missing out on your talent. Sometimes you're just actually not good enough and you need a reality check and you need to sharpen your tools up. So I think it's really important for us to kind of keep that into perspective as well. Like if we're not getting the results that we want out of life, then we need to reevaluate. Maybe we need to take a few steps back. Maybe we need to pause for a second and we need to start working on, actually start figuring out, okay, so if I didn't get into this school, what was the reason why? Was it because my GPA wasn't good enough? Did I not do enough extracurricular activities to get into the school? Same thing when it comes down to searching for jobs or trying to get into a certain company or trying to get into some exclusive group or whatever it may be. You need to evaluate what you bring to the table and how you can actually get better. And a lot of times these things can be blessings in disguise. One example I think about right now, which I'm pretty sure you guys have probably heard about as well, but when Michael Jordan was a sophomore in high school, he got cut from the varsity basketball team. And really what that did was just make him actually work like a madman. He didn't go play for the JV team. I don't think he might have played for the JV team, but from what I understand, he just took the year off and just literally just honed his skills, worked on his jump shot, worked on his crossover, worked on every single part of his game. And then next year as a junior, Michael Jordan came back and dominated. And then, the rest was history. He became the greatest player to ever play basketball. So that negativity ended up fueling him into becoming the greatest player ever, arguably. I mean, I think Michael Jordan's the greatest player ever, but I mean, that's up for debate. Some people think LeBron, some people think Kobe, but that killer instinct might have been born at that time because Michael Jordan is really known for his killer instinct. So that killer instinct might have came from that kind of vengeance that he had, flowing through his DNA after that. So these are things that we can take into consideration. And I know a lot of people kind of have the I would say that's kind of like when it comes down to the dating world as well, we can kind of still have that same philosophy when it comes down to, I wouldn't necessarily say getting revenge, getting the last laugh or anything like that, but it's just bettering ourselves and becoming a better version of ourselves so we have more options. And I think that's something we should be doing in all areas of life. Like every area of life is a little bit different. So we can't necessarily think that. Actually, I had a good conversation with somebody about this today, and it was about gratitude. And it was just we were just talking about how we can be extremely grateful in 90% of the areas of our life, but then we can actually be a spoiled brat when it comes down to like 10% of the areas of our life. And the same thing can come with when it comes down to getting our last laugh and the way that we kind of view things. It's like every area of life we might be at a different maturity level. Every area of life we might be at a different level as far as what type of value that we bring. And let me get to some of these comments. Art says, can't comment as at work, but blessings, guys. Absolute value here. Appreciate you, Art. Thanks for stopping through. And Conqueror Jordan, what's up, JD and James? What's good? And let's see. Also, so good that the rejection we are focused on isn't strictly on women. I use rejection as fuel and a moment to reflect and to motivate. Yeah, exactly. I think that's what we should be using. I think we should probably use most of the negative experiences in our life as motivation and as fuel. And it's just something that, just comes along with maturity. It's like we can either be upset at our circumstances, our current circumstances, or we can just do something about it.
Yeah, and I think another thing is, rejection is never final. It's, throughout your entire life, it's like, you might not be ready for a certain opportunity or calisthenics movement or relationship at the moment. But unless you end up getting buckled by a rejection, where a rejection ends up buckling your knee and you end up actually quitting or you stop giving all your effort, that's kind of when that rejection can actually have negatively affected you. But I've always kind of thought in my head, the way you frame the rejection is a huge, basically determinant on how it's going to affect you. Do you frame it as, oh, this opportunity rejected me, so I'm going to prove that opportunity that not only am I going to achieve that, but I'm actually going to do that and then some. It's like Michael Jordan takes getting cut by a varsity team, and he upstages it so big that he ends up being the best player to ever do it in the entire game. And some people actually, they get their knee buckled like that sophomore year and they just quit. Like it actually, what's crazy about it is you could actually have had someone that had the potential to be the best in the world quit at 16 years old or however old sophomores are. Or you can take that as fuel and say, no, I'm going to upstage this. Like you think right now I'm not good enough for this team. Well, I'm going to show you, not only am I good enough for this team, I'm good enough to be on any team that ever existed. And actually, one of the things I think about, I kind of had this with writing. I remember my teacher in 9th grade would always like give me, bad grades on my assignments. He didn't like my writing style. He didn't like what I would write about. And, by the time I was 19, I remember I had a job working and it was a very heavily writing dependent. I did a lot of writing for my job. And I remember just like thinking about that dude, like, he didn't think my writing was good enough for him, but I was like, well, this company actually thinks my writing is good enough to compensate me more than the school would compensate him to teach me. And it's like, that's kind of taps into a little bit of dark motivation of like a negative way, like, a little bit of anger, but it's fuel. And it's like, I feel like these opportunities when, something like life hits you in the face, it's like you can get back up and you can use that as motivation that, that rejection or that setback not only it's not going to prevent you from reaching your goal, it's going to allow you to far surpass it. And I feel like that mentality, if you apply it to any area of your life, is like, it's so powerful.
Yeah, I think like there's a couple things I take from that. It's like, number one, the mentality that we approach things with can go in like one or two directions. So basically, when Michael Jordan was cut by his high school team, he was basically stuck at a fork in the road. And when you look at it like that, you basically have two options. You can either submit to being cut by the team and just say, hey, maybe basketball is not for me. Maybe I'll go give baseball a try. Or you can say, nah, I'm not gonna accept rejection. I'm not gonna accept failure. And I'm gonna just keep going and I'm gonna keep fighting tooth and nail until I actually make something of myself as a basketball player. So that's like one mentality that you can have versus having another mentality. I also think that we can kind of take this into the business world as well. And I think about this a lot of times just because I'm an entrepreneur. And I think about this when it comes down to my fitness business or just any business that I've started or done in general. And I can think about businesses that I've done that I didn't really have too much of a passion for. And then businesses that I've done that I actually am extremely passionate about, just like calisthenics and personal training and, helping people become the best version of themselves physically. And again, if you guys are interested in that, you guys can either hit my email, travelcynics@yahoo.com, or go to my website, travelcynics.com, if you guys want to train with me. I do online training. But when I was living in Japan, or actually this is even before I started living in Japan, I was just traveling in Japan a lot. And I had it in my head because I was enjoying myself going to Japan so much. I was like, man, I really want to live in Japan. I need to figure out a way that I can actually sustainably live here. Let me start up a business. So I started up, me and one of my buddies that I used to work at San Francisco airport with. What we did was we started importing American vintage clothing to Japan because it was really popular at the time. So we were going to different shops and, making a little bit of money here and there, bringing vintage clothing out to Japan. But then eventually we were like, hey, you know what? We're making a little bit of money and we're doing a lot of work. But let's see if we can actually, get a space, rent a shop, and actually open up our own vintage clothing store out here. So we ended up figuring out that we're going to need to bring a Japanese citizen along with us, and they would be able to do some of the groundwork for us out there. And we obviously couldn't put things in our name. Make a long story short, we ended up kind of getting scammed out of it and ended up losing some money doing that. But for me, and I'm pretty sure, and for my friend as well, vintage clothing wasn't actually our passion. What we were trying to do was just make money. So we ended up, getting rejected by that vintage clothing business, and we just submitted to it. Just like James would say, we let it buckle us. But for me, it wasn't necessarily something that I wanted to keep, pushing forward on. I ended up having an Airbnb business that worked out really well. I did that for almost 4 years in Japan. And then when it comes down to the current business that I do right now, this business has tried to buckle me plenty of times. Some months are great when it comes down to revenue. It's like me and James have this thing about calisthenics movements and personal records. It's like they come in batches. It's like when you're hitting new movements, when you're knocking off PRs, it's like they literally come like every day or every other day. It's crazy how often that you can hit PRs when you're in that kind of PR mindset. And the same thing goes for when you're when you're running a business. It's like when the wheels are turning and, you're in a groove when it comes down to working with your clients and, your sales is on point. It's like you knock off one client and boom, you get another client, boom, you get another client, boom. They just keep on coming in every day and boom. Next thing you know, somebody orders one of my programs, somebody orders one of my ebooks, and I'm just getting pings on my cell phone. But then there's times when it's like a month goes by and I'm like, shit, I haven't had a new client, barely had anybody buy any programs. You know what I mean? It's like, shit, money's kind of funny. It's like you start questioning yourself, but that's that rejection and that correction when it comes down to the cycle of life in general. So are you willing to, keep persevering through the hard times, or are you going to let these, bumps in the road buckle you?
And that's actually a good topic too, because knowing when to cut bait and take on a different pursuit is also something that shouldn't be underestimated. It's like, there is that mentality of, you're meant for something. And it's like, you have to actually this is very hard too, to have an honest self-assessment, because it's like, it's easy to view yourself maybe as better than you are at something or worse than you are at something. Or it's easy to have, people that are close to you and that like you, say, oh, you're meant for this. So it really is. That's a good kind of question on when do you override that person that, gives you that rejection. You say, they tell you you're not good enough. You say, no, it's not going to work like that. No, I am. And I'm going to keep going at this opportunity harder. Or when is there a time where it's like, hey man, this is actually like, you're literally swimming upstream on this pursuit. Like you're 5'5", you're trying to be a pro NBA player. You can't jump for shit. Your coordination's terrible. You can't shoot. And it's like, you got rejected from the team. Well, it's like, if you try to have the Michael Jordan mindset, it's like, you're probably just going to keep getting squashed like a bug. And it's probably actually going to just end up taking up more of your life's energy. So I think that's one of the hardest things in life, is kind of really navigating space. And I know one thing I have found, though, when you're passionate about something, it's like life just gets out of your way. It's like all kinds of obstacles that other people can come up with like a million different things, or why this is impossible, why that's impossible, why you can't do an Airbnb thing in a foreign country, why you can't do this. But when you're truly passionate about something, it's like it has a way of like penetrating through all the obstacles like they don't even exist, honestly.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. But I think when it comes down to like, first I'm gonna get to actually some comments real quick, and then we'll get back to. I want to keep it in my mind that I want to talk about the point of cutting bait. When do you cut bait? When is it when you get rejected that it's actually a good time to give up, and when is it to give up and find a new pursuit? So I want to get into that after I touch on some of these comments. Bassy F, good to have you back. Love the consistency. Appreciate you for coming through, Bassy. And Conqueror Jordan, I agree with all the points so far. To me, rejection falls under the umbrella of adversity. It's a necessary evil per se. I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. And Tracy says, salute James and JD. What's going on, Tracy? Glad to have you in here. And again, just since I see Tracy, it kind of reminded me of it. When it comes down to the Growth Mastermind, we're going to start that up next weekend. I believe that's going to be, at least that's what I'm aiming for. James, I'm actually just telling you this right now. But I think that'll work out for next weekend to be the first round of the Growth Mastermind. We got some people who signed up. Also, some other people who emailed and inquired about it. Again, Growth Mastermind is basically going to be a private chat. We're probably going to do it on like Google Meets or something like that. And it'll be everybody who's in the Growth Mastermind. We're going to be on cam and be able to chop it up, go over different growth topics, assign readings, physical fitness, mandatory workouts, reading lists, networking. There's some high level people who've been reaching out so far. So I think it would be a good opportunity. And even if you feel like you're not at a high level and you're not a high performer yet, me and James's objective of this is to take people who aren't high performers and turn them into high performers. So that's one of the goals and objectives. Also, we'll have a WhatsApp group chat that we'll have there too, so everybody can tap in and kind of exchange information. And let's see here. Conqueror Jordan. And again, it's going to be $25 a month. And for me, I don't really, and I actually have told some of my friends about this as well. And they're like, man, $25 a month is extremely cheap for, what's going to be offered in this growth mastermind. And we'll be doing probably 2 meetings a month, but we might even do more if it means that we have to kind of adjust to different time zones and stuff like that. And Conqueror Jordan, I think it's healthy to get rejected in your endeavors every once in a while, as it keeps you grounded, and it's a test of your character for sure. I think we're just constantly getting our character tested. Even for me with this whole testicular cancer thing, I think it tested my character in a lot of ways, and it kind of revealed a few things about myself that maybe I didn't know, and it also kind of revealed a few things about people who are around me's character, and most of it is a good thing. But Conqueror Jordan, you can really see if you are the person that you think you are with how you respond to it, for sure. I definitely agree with that. And Ben Martinez, what's up, guys? And Art says, I'm going to sign up ASAP. I get paid on the 28th. Is that too late? No, it's not too late. So if you get paid on the 28th, just first off, send me an email, and then we can chop it up in private about it. So if you guys are interested, I'm going to put my email address in here as well.
That's another thing, too. If you're not getting rejected or you're not failing at things, you're not attempting difficult enough challenges. It's like if you're never failing a rep in calisthenics, it's like that to me means you're not trying difficult enough challenges or movements, or if every job you apply for accepts you, you're probably aiming way below your level. So, I mean, I feel like you have to find that balance of like, how difficult of a challenge do you take on? You don't want to take on a challenge that's like so far out of your reach that you basically subconsciously know it's not possible, but then you also don't want to take on challenges that are so easy that it bores you. You have to have that target. It's kind of like that flow state mentality of finding the appropriate challenge and aiming for that target that's just a little bit past your current level, and then allow yourself to stretch to reach that. And I think that's kind of what the value of rejection is, right? You don't want to have 100% rejection rate, but then at the other end of the spectrum, it's like 0% is far too little. So it's like you really have to find that perfect balance.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like it's almost like we're playing baseball and we're up at bat and we're trying to hit the sweet spot. So, that's basically what it comes down to when it comes down to a lot of areas of life. And I actually wanted to pivot back, double back, and touch on that point that you had made about when do you give up on something that you just keep on getting rejected and rejected and rejected and rejected with? Now, for me, I would say like I've had for the most part, when it comes down to like different pursuits and different endeavors that I have in my life, I usually give myself a certain amount of rope. So, for instance, and this is actually an interesting story I'll share with you guys about one of my clients as well. And so, one of my clients, he was working for some type of financial institution, some type of corporate job. I don't know if it was like investing or something like that. I really kind of didn't know what it was. I didn't really ask too many questions. But anyways, he was telling me he wanted to give himself 2.5 years to start his own business. He didn't want it. He wanted to travel. He wanted to be remote. He wanted to start up a YouTube channel. He wanted to, start up his own practice when it came down to investments or something like that. I forget exactly what it was. But his strategy when it came down to how long he was going to give himself for his business to actually take off was what he did was he just worked his 9 to 5. He saved up enough money to where, this was his words, I saved up enough money to where I didn't need to ask my parents for anything for 2.5 years. So I have enough money to survive on my own for 2.5 years, travel, go different places, maybe throw some money in the advertisement, throw some things at the wall and see if it sticks. And if it doesn't work after 2.5 years, then I go back to the 9 to 5 grind. I can say I gave it my all, and I might come up with another idea one of these days, but I'm gonna give myself 2.5 years to see this thing through. If it doesn't work out, oh well, start over. You know what I mean? And I think that's a good attitude to have when it comes down to it. And I actually had a conversation with somebody about this as well. With my own personal business and the YouTube thing and everything like that. Is like, how long do you keep going at it if you're not seeing the type of results that you actually want to go? And for me, that's always been the same thing. It's like, I'm going to give myself a certain amount of time to do things that I'm passionate about solely, and want to give myself an appropriate, because that's another thing when it comes down to starting your own business, is that I do think that it's possible to start your own business working a 9 to 5. Like my boy G always says, you have your 9 to 5 and then you have your 5 to 9. But I do think that if you really are serious about something, then you are going to give it the majority of your time. You might not do that at first, but eventually you're going to want to actually give something 100% of your energy. And, that's probably going to be your best bet into seeing if this thing can actually come to fruition or not. Because a lot of times when you kind of play that 1 foot in, 1 foot out thing, you might not ever get the results that you're actually looking for, and you might not ever, your ideas might just not bear any fruit. So I definitely think that, it is good to go all in when it's time to go in on something. I could think about that when it comes down to relationships as well. It's like, if you're always, protecting yourself, or you have your guard up when it comes down to getting into a relationship, you're never really going to know if you really have something truly special. So you have to kind of, let your guard down at some point and figure out if you're going to go all in on this thing or not. Otherwise, you're just kind of like half-assing things, and half-assing things in life doesn't really get you too far.
And I think half-assing stuff is like, people kind of think that, you do two things half-assed and it's like you get half of one and half of the other. And the truth is you end up getting neither. I think, especially when it comes to like actually your time, like I think multitasking, for example, is not an efficient use of your time. Like I think you should really hone in and, focus on what you're focusing on when you spend the time on it. But I think too, for that like cut, I think, sometimes the market needs, time to respond. And I think every pursuit has a different time frame that makes sense. Like for example, YouTube, that's kind of like one I've noticed. Like I remember back when I was like super into, I got into fitness when I was about 14 years old, but then I kind of fell out of it for like 3 or 4 years. And I remember when I first started working out, I remember I used to watch Elliot Hulse and the Hodge twins, their channels, and they were small at the time. They were like tiny channels, actually smaller than JD's channel is right now. I remember that's when I started, and now it's like their channels both blew up to like well over like 1 million or 2 million subscribers. But I remember seeing like Elliot Hulse he would like post videos like every single day, and he was having like 100 views, 150 views. And then I remember coming back, when I was 18, and then seeing like his thing just, absolutely just blew through the roof. But I think every pursuit that you take on has a different time horizon, right? So if trying to think of like different businesses people start, but certain ones you're going to know very soon whether or not that business is going to be a success. And then there's some businesses that have a huge, some businesses might actually take 10 or 15 years to reach maturity. Like you look at some of the bigger businesses out there, like some of the things that Elon Musk might be trying to do, or even like Mark Zuckerberg with like the metaverse, whether or not you think that that's a good idea or not. But there's certain businesses that have a time in the span of decades, and those are the kind of ones that if they end up working out and paying off, they usually end up paying off 1,000-fold. whereas kind of the quick money pursuits tend to pay off a little bit less, but you get a little bit more money up front. And I think that's kind of why people are attracted to that, right? Like you start up your own business as a Uber driver, which I guess you could call that a business, or maybe yes, maybe no. But it's like you're
It's like
instantly profitable from day one.
independent contractor.
Yeah. I mean, that's, you're profitable from day one. You have your own business, you got your whatever, but it's like you're kind of capped out from day one as well. So as you get paid on day one, but your cap is also on day one. And then, some of the slow cooking businesses, it's like you might be underwater for, 5 years, but then when that does bear fruit, it's like it comes with a whole tsunami. So
100%.
Whatever your style is.
Another thing we need to kind of ask ourselves when it comes down to a lot of these goals and these aspirations that we have is like, what are we actually looking to get out of it? Like, is money the main objective when it comes down to what you're starting? So I would say for me, when it comes down to my YouTube channel, for instance, it's like, do I want to make money off it? Yes, I think everybody wants to make money off of YouTube who starts a YouTube channel. Do I want to make money off my business? Yes, I want to make money off my business. But is that the number one thing? Is that the number one factor into why I do what I do? Or am I actually doing it for the love and I want other things to bear fruit from it? And money is like icing on top of the cake. So for me, with the YouTube channel thing, my goals with the YouTube channel is to actually share my growth journey and help others reach their goals and actually surpass certain things that I've actually done. So for me, if I can, even if I'm only reaching, I don't know, 10 people, 15 people, 20 people, that makes a huge difference in terms of why I do what I do. Because when I get emails from people and tell me and that are thanking me for the content that I make, or I get certain comments in the comment section and people are, appreciative of the work that I do, that actually fuels me enough to keep going more so than finances. You know what I mean? So the money is always good. But at the end of the day, actually, this is actually interesting that this even came up to begin with, or maybe this is what actually sparked the idea in my head. Is I was just watching this YouTube video that I probably watched like 3 times before. And this dude made a good analogy. He was saying that some people do things for different motivations. Like, say, for instance, there's an artist, like a musician. Some musicians are basically creating for like to get big on social media, or they want to get fame, or they want to get money, or whatever it may be. But then some people are just doing it strictly for the love of the art. And it's like you can hear the difference between somebody's music who's doing it for the passion of actually loving music versus somebody who's doing it just because they're trying to get likes, or they're trying to get big on TikTok or whatever it may be. And it's just an interesting thing to think about. And the guy actually compared that to eating at a restaurant versus eating at your grandmother's house. It's like your grandmother's going to put soul in the food. Your grandmother's going to, and this is his words, he was like, your grandmother's going to put her foot in it. And if you guys are, I don't know if you guys have heard that term before, but my dad always used to say that when I was a kid. He's like, oh, he put his foot in whatever he cooked or whatever. And it's like, yeah, of course, the fast food restaurant, they're going to put a bunch of salt. They're going to put a bunch of MSG. They're going to put a bunch of sugar in it to make it taste good, to make it, highly palatable. But it's something that your grandma did. She cooked it with love to the point where that food's just going to taste better. You're going to appreciate the meal better. Everything that comes with the meal, you're going to be around family. Like, it just makes the meal so much better. So you got to think about what actually is your motivation for doing what you do. And I think it's interesting because on YouTube, I see it all the time. There's some YouTube content creators who I see who make content because they actually are, passionate about what they're talking about. And then there's some people who just want to drop a bunch of volume of videos just because they think that this is the easiest way to blow up on YouTube. For instance, and I don't even mind name dropping on this, is like if you have somebody like Greg Doucette, he drops 2, or I don't know how many videos he drops every day, but he drops a bunch of BS videos every single day, accusing people of being on steroids, all types of shit. It's like people are dropping these gossip videos nonstop. And it's like you're just trying to get clicks. You're not actually even talking about anything that you're probably even believe in or that you actually care about. And for me, it just shows a difference between the actual reason, I think the reason why you get into something is going to be a huge difference in terms of how you deal with that rejection.
Yeah, I mean that's another one too with these kind of platforms because it actually is an easy trap to fall into, right? Because it's like the platform's trying to mold you into something basically, and it's like it's going to give you rewards if you post content that is in alignment with what the specific platform might be trying to push, and then it's going to punish you if you're not tapped in with whatever the current trend is with that. It's like, oh, what music do you pick for your video? It's like, oh, they're trying to push this genre of music right now, so they're going to blow up. But I think I actually thought about this a lot actually with the whole YouTube thing because I was realizing, like, remember back in Hawaii, like I started like training a couple people at the park, and it was like I was completely over it. It was like the people had like no passion for what they were doing, and I was like, I stopped doing that like way back, and I was like thinking about it. I'm like, what actually is my goals in like this pursuit? And I think the truth is, I think at least for me, and I think JD can kind of relate with this, is I think, it's about seeing people's potential and just showing them their own potential. It's like, some of you guys in the chat right now are like, you might have a certain view of yourself and you don't even realize how much potential is like locked up inside yourself that, with these techniques we're going to show you guys, it's like you're going to unlock and you're going to actually see a new part of yourself. And, it's not like that's anything we gave to you. It's like something we showed that was already within yourself that, now you got to unlock. And I think that was kind of the coolest thing that I experienced with fitness in my own life was basically seeing like, viewing myself in a certain way and then, pushing past these different hurdles and then watching myself literally become a different person or do stuff that I previously thought was impossible. And kind of sharing those principles with people and watching them because we know it works. It's like it's not even, this isn't something that works for me or something that works for, no, this is something that works on everyone. This isn't like, 7 days a week isn't like, oh, some people have the 7 day a week gene and, it doesn't work for other people. That's not how it works. This works for literally everyone. And it's like, to me, it's so cool to watch other people kind of reap the rewards of like some of the experimentation and stuff that we've done with it.
Yeah, I think like speaking on that, it's almost, I think one of the frustrations that comes along with training people sometimes is that you train people who either A, don't believe in themselves, or either B, don't really have any passion for what they're actually doing. It's almost like if somebody's just getting in because they want a quick fix on something, like say for instance, somebody's watching this video or they watched one of my other videos and they see my transformation and progress that I made, and they're like, "Ooh, I want that transformation," but they really don't even want to put the work in. They miss the whole meat and potatoes of the video of like how I transformed, the reason why I transformed, the changes that I wanted to make in my life, the fact that I love the process, and they just straight up went from A, where I was in the beginning when I was at my low point, to B or to Z, where I was at the end of the video. Actually, I wouldn't even say Z because we're never a finished product. But let's just say from A to B, where I was in the beginning of the video to the end of the video, and they just skipped the whole middle section, the actual nuance of the video. In their mind, they're just thinking results, 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 results. When in all reality, it is you have to really fall in love with the process. And it's like, for me, I prefer to train people and work with people one-on-one who I'm actually can see that they are kind of, embracing the challenges, embracing the battle, embracing these daily battles that they have. And, looking at it as like, okay, this is a war that I'm in, but every day is a little bit of a battle. I want to just gain a little bit of ground on the opposition. And the opposition is actually yourself. So, these are definitely things that we need to take into consideration when we're starting these pursuits.
Man, I was actually having a conversation with another trainer, and this is kind of an interesting thing. We talked about this briefly, but they were talking about how for them, it's like, they want to, basically the analogy was, when you're selling a trip to Hawaii, you're not advertising, how comfortable the seats are on the trip to Hawaii. You're advertising, how nice the destination is. So, you want to sell your clients on results, like, oh, the 6-pack is basically what we're going to give you, and then don't talk about the process. And at first I was like, that's actually brilliant. I was like, I never thought about that. But then the more I actually kept diving in, I'm like, actually, no, I think that's completely flawed, because that's assuming that in that analogy, it's like, no, you stay on the plane the rest of your life. It's like, this isn't fixed. Like, your body is adapting to whatever circumstances you're in. So it's like, in that analogy, it's like, oh, you take a plane trip, you arrive at 6-pack abs, you stop training, you keep the 6-pack. That's not accurate. No, the real analogy is you stay on the plane for the rest of your life. So find a good plane, because you're not getting off the plane. It's like, this isn't a temporary journey. This is like, until you're in the dirt, you keep working out. Like, that's my thing. It's like, if I make it to 90 years old, it's like the day I die, it's like, I want to be in the hospital room doing squats in the, until I drop, so I think, I don't know, that's maybe just kind of my mentality behind it. But it's like, this isn't a temporary fix. We're not doctors where it's like, you come here, you get prescribed 3-week this to fix this, and then you just go back to playing World of Warcraft, and then you keep your newfound gains. Now, this is a permanent, like, this is a change. This isn't a pill that you take and then it's, you've solved the problems you have.
Man, it's funny because, like, when it comes down to like the 7-day-a-week mindset, and when it comes down to, the knowledge that we've acquired, when it comes down to fitness or whatever these goals that we have in our life, it really does just give you a certain amount of confidence. It's like, for me right now, I have to kind of basically sit down for 6 weeks. And it's been like 2 weeks. I haven't really even done too much of moving around at all. I just started taking walks. And, I had all these kind of, when you first start off, being inactive and, not moving around as much as you normally do, because 7 days a week, it's like and on top of that, it's not even just once a day that I'm working out. It's multiple times per day. And then all of a sudden you're just like sitting there like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? Twiddle my thumbs? Like, okay, I got my work done for the day. Now what? And for me, at first I had all these, irrational fears about, like, oh, I'm going to lose some strength. I'm going to, but the 7 days a week ingrained so much into your muscle memory, into your actual, James, you made a point yesterday about, muscle cells don't go away. They just might get smaller temporarily, and then they spring right back up once you get active. And for me, honestly, when I look in the mirror every day, I'm like, shit, I really haven't really lost too much muscle to begin with. And it's been like 2 weeks of not doing any resistance training. So now I'm like kind of realizing the work that I've put in before has solidified me. And then whatever I do lose, I already know the formula to get it back. So it's not even really anything to stress out about. And that's the thing I want to teach other people. Cause like when it comes down to like training with me one-on-one, or either scooping up one of my programs, the goal isn't like, I'm not one of these trainers who, I see it all the time at the gym, or when I used to go to the gym. It's like, I don't know if you've seen this before, James, but you see a trainer and he has a specific client, right? And you've been going to this gym for 2.5, 3 years. This dude has been working with the same client for like 3 years, and he barely has made any improvements to his physique. It's almost like at that point, the trainer is like a drug dealer. So for me, my goal and my motivation when I work with somebody is like, hey, I want to work with this person attentively for 3 or 4 months. But after this 3 or 4 months, he's not going to need to work with any trainer ever again, because he's already going to have that mindset, and he's already going to have a base of information that's going to be able to take him into whatever area of life that he actually wants to go down when it comes down to fitness. So it's like the mentality of either trying to string people along, or the mentality of actually trying to teach people something. Like the mindset that you learn with the 7 days per week, and the grease and the groove, and like the constant movement and embracing the journey, is something that you can take into any pursuit. And after you kind of get that ingrained in your head, you don't necessarily need as much guidance as you would prior to having that mindset. I'm gonna jump on a couple of these comments, and I'll let you get to it, James. I believe that if you keep getting rejected in something, you should really think of a goal if the goal you're pursuing is yours. Excuse me. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. 100%. I agree with that. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. You need to think of how much you actually are passionate about it. And Tracy, what's going on? I recently quit my job. I'm pretty sure that mean what you mean. Job as a janitor on Big Island and relocated to Oahu that very next day after quitting. I didn't feel appreciated for the solid work I was doing over there. Yeah, sometimes when you have jobs that you're not passionate about, or sometimes when you just get into a job in general, you don't necessarily feel appreciated. I've had jobs like that where I felt like, I did a good job at what I was doing, but I didn't necessarily get appreciated. And I actually saw, I think there's a podcast called The Pivot, and it's with some ex NFL players. One of the guys on there, he's a analyst for ESPN named Ryan Clark. I just remember him because when I used to watch football, I used to like the Steelers. He was a safety for the Steelers, and he was talking about everybody was giving their accounts on how they got into the NFL and their first big paycheck. Everybody's talking about, oh, my first paycheck was 1.5 million. My first paycheck was 14 million, and he was just like, shit. My first paycheck was like 15,000 or not even that. I think he said it was $500 or some shit like that. He was just like, he barely made the team on the practice squad. And he was like, he went and spent it on like a nice outfit or something like that. But he was basically talking about how through maybe his first 3 or 4 years in the NFL, he felt like he wasn't appreciated by any team that he played for. And he was like fighting tooth and nail just to get appreciation. Then he said he was playing for the Washington Redskins, or that's what they were called at the time. I think they're called the football team or something like that now, or the Commanders. And he was playing for them, and he said that his contract came up for renegotiation, and they tried to offer him a minimum contract. And he said that there was another player in the NFL who they ended up signing to be the highest paid safety in the NFL, so he automatically felt unappreciated. But then he ended up getting recruited by 2 other teams. One of them was the Pittsburgh Steelers, who he ended up playing with. And they didn't give him like any guarantees on like you're going to be our starting safety or anything like that. But they offered him a decent amount of money, like I think it was like $3 million or whatever. And they said we want you to play here, and we will give you an opportunity to start. But he said that was the first time he'd ever felt appreciated in his life. And a lot of times we can be in situations where we don't feel appreciated. It is time to move on to greener pastures and try something else. And even if it's not something guaranteed, even if it's somebody just saying, hey, I like what you're doing, I want to give you a chance. And that might be the crack in the door that you need for a new opportunity and for new beginnings.
And I want to talk about too, this is kind of an interesting thing though when it comes to appreciation, because I think the company needs to show you appreciation through finances, and don't ever let verbal appreciation allow you to get underpaid, because I've noticed like a lot of companies are actually kind of brilliant at this. They use almost, what would you call it? Validation capital to pay employees. It's like, oh my God, thank you guys so much. You guys did the greatest job. It's like, you did an average job, and then they come in, it's like they're paying you 15 an hour, but then it's like they just tell you that like, you're the most valuable employee, and that, they care about you so much. And the thing is like, if you allow that to get to you, you might be like, oh, this job, cared about me so much, whereas the other job just slapped 35 an hour on the table, and they're like, yeah, you're dog shit, but whatever, here's 35 an hour.
Yeah, we need you.
Really, they appreciate you a lot more.
But we need you.
So I think not to say that companies, shouldn't verbally appreciate you as well. That's always nice. But I think too, don't allow yourself to be lured by, slick talking, managers or business people that are good at kind of talking you into undervaluing yourself. I've had, managers before. They're like, oh, stay with us. Oh, we know you're underpaid, but, oh, no other company is going to allow you to do this. And, oh, we love work. And it's like, so you got to watch out for that end as well. on, slick talking, people that are basically trying to tap into, our human desire for validation to get us to undervalue ourselves.
Yeah, that's what pimps do to prostitutes.
It's alive and well in the corporate world as well. So
Yeah, exactly. I remember when I was working for United Airlines, we actually, this was like probably right before the pandemic. We had like this thing, I forget what it was called. It was like called Backstage or some shit like that. It was like some corporate event, right? And they flew us all out to Chicago, and not everybody at the same time in the company, but I guess it was like 1 week this group of people will go to Chicago. They put you up in these fancy hotels, send you to these nice dinners. They give you all these little gifts and everything like that. And it's basically just all fluff to make you kind of feel better about working for the company. But it's like, I would have just foregone all that shit if you would have just gave me an extra dollar per hour. You know what I mean? And it's like that would have made way more of a difference in my life than, going and having this nice little week-long experience in Chicago and, hearing them sing praises to me about how important my job is and all this other type of shit. So that kind of falls under the same category. And Conqueror Jordan says, yeah, exactly, James. Good example of those dudes who were investing in crypto businesses back in the 2000s and insane ROI 15 years later. Exactly. So, this is something that me and James were talking about the other day too. And I think you brought this up, James. And it's like investing in something before everybody else sees value in it. And we were actually, I think we might have even just been talking about women and just talking about how the women that a lot of people see value in is like Instagram models and all this other type of stuff. And they actually really don't have any true value. But sometimes you can find women do this all the time. I think women are actually really good at this in terms of finding value. They might see a guy, he might not have as much money as he wants to, be making at the time, but they see that he's got ambition. They see that he's got, some drive and he's got good character. And they might be well off themselves. And they're just like, well, I want to be with this guy anyways and support him because I see he's got potential. So that's basically the way you want to invest when it comes down to your investments, when it comes down to anything that you're looking to put your energy into. Everybody knows Apple is a good stock because it's probably overvalued right now. Same thing with Google, same thing with Tesla. But before those stocks got big, they were undervalued stocks. So you have to realize that everything, has different values, and the perception of those values can fluctuate. So, people might not think something has value. They might not think my channel has value right now, but I think my channel has a lot of value. So eventually my channel is going to grow. And then James had made this point the other day when we were talking. He's like, eventually your channel might get overvalued. I might get to the point where I have so much subscribers and people are listening to everything I say, and I might just be, I might be at a point where I'm just breathing hot air. So you have to think about things like that. People might take my words too seriously at a certain point.
Man, honestly, I think it's kind of funny. I've noticed this. I don't know if you've seen the same thing with like certain channels, but there's it's like some channels I loved, like when they're on the rise. And it was like,
this is a good comment right here for this as well.
It's true, but I mean the thing is, a lot of times people's peak is like a lot of times when they have that hunger. And I think a lot of times after, like YouTubers or podcasters kind of make it, it's like then they like stay at this peak for a bit, but then I think they like lose a level of hunger. They get a little bit lazy, or they like don't have that same edge. And then it's kind of like a end stage. Like there's a few people I used to love to listen to, and I'm not even gonna say who it is, but like their podcast, but I used to listen to it when it was early on, and it's like now it's like you listen to it and it's like they're literally just like swiping the punch. They're just like, oh, clocked in for the day, oh, swiped out at the end. And it's like, but a lot of times the hungry kind of channel, like those rising channels, it's like that's when you're gonna find the real gems. It's like, because that's like someone that's really on the rise. It's like it's kind of the same with sports too. It's like you have that hungry person coming out of high school, like tearing through college, and making a name for themselves in the league. And then, maybe after 10 years, like, oh, I never became the superstar or whatever, just let everything taper off and I'll just keep punching the clock until my time comes to an end.
That's actually, I don't know if you guys are boxing fans out there, but the late, great Marvin Hagler, He was a middleweight champion for a long time. And Marvin Hagler, I forget exactly, I'll paraphrase it, but I know he said, like, it's easier to get up and go run X amount of miles and go train at 6 in the morning, when you don't have anything. But, try doing it when you're waking up on silk sheets. So, you know what I mean? Once you've already made it, you got millions in the bank, you got a maid bringing you breakfast in bed. Like, how easy is it going to go out for you to go out and do road work? How easy is it going to for you to go out, get up and go hit the heavy bag, or, go lift weight? Even just with the thought of going into a bout, getting punched in the face. So, how easy is it going to be for you to actually put your all into something once you feel like you quote unquote made it? And that's it kind of touches into like that retirement mindset too. Just like you were saying, James, like when you clock out, you want to be 90 years old in the hospital doing squats. Some people, they have the idea of like, oh, well, when I get 62 or 64, whatever the retirement age is, I'm just going to be able to, relax. I'm going to kick my feet up. I'm going to relax. I'm going to be, drinking a pina colada on some tropical island. And yeah, that's it. I don't need to worry about anything. I don't even want to use my brain after that. And it's like that mentality is like, well, with that mentality, what's actually the reason? What's the purpose of living at that point? Because for me, growth is like the number one goal in life anyway. So it's like we're constantly growing. And even once we get 62, once we get 70, once we get 75, 80, 85 years old, we should still be growing. Like one thing that I talk to my dad about all the time. And my dad, actually, matter of fact, he ended up calling me last night. My dad called me last night and he was like, hey, check out, there's a program on some channel or something like that. He was saying there's a program about this and that, about some history program. He was like, I think I'm going to learn a lot from it, and you should check it out too. But the whole thing is like, my dad is 84 years old. So for my dad to be 84 years old and be like, oh, I think this is a valuable program because I think I can learn something from it, that means that he can still grow at 84 years old. Even if the person who put the program together is only 25 years old, an 84-year-old man thinks that he can get something from it. So we should always be constantly in a mindset that we can learn something from other people, no matter what age they are, what gender they are, no matter what race they are, ethnicity, religion, anything. We can learn something from anybody. Sometimes people teach us things without even trying. And but Art, I'm actually gonna read this off. I actually take a YouTuber's low follower count and actual content into consideration. YouTube channels with sub 50K subscribers tend to be uncompromised. Also, as an artist, I do it for the love and the legacy. Yeah, I definitely think that could be true. Like me and my brother, we used to have this thing when it came down to people's albums. It's like you always know that first album that went off for them. That's always going to be their best one, because after that first album, it's like, number one, it's going to be hard to even compete with it anyways, because of kind of like the sentimental feeling of it, but also the hunger might not necessarily be there as well. Unfortunately, masses are asses, so I'm wary of the Greg Doucetts of the world. Yeah, 100%. Conqueror Jordan. All the best experience that I've had on YouTube over last many years I've been on the platform have been when I have been involved in smaller channels. Yeah, for sure. Sometimes we can actually catch a channel like when it's small, and sometimes, like, I remember there's a few channels that I watched on YouTube where maybe I saw them when they were like right around 3,000 subscribers or 7,000 subscribers. And it was like, man, this channel is fucking good. And it's like, definitely like this channel's tight. And then eventually, like, I kept watching, and eventually they ended up blowing up. And actually one of the channels that I was watching back then, I think I started watching at like 3,000 subscribers. It eventually got to like 90,000 subscribers. And then the dude just completely went off of YouTube and went to Patreon exclusively. And with that being said, if you guys want to support the channel, go to my Patreon, $5 a month. Patreon.com/growth through calisthenics. And Rolling Red, thanks for coming through. And Conqueror Jordan, a lot of creators seem to lose themselves when the tree bears fruit. Yeah, I think what it is that I don't necessarily think that it's even something that people can even help to a certain extent, because you have to think about it, especially in this society that's like driven by money. So let's just say, for instance, And I think that money is like one of these things that's kind of addictive, similar to like women or drugs or something like that. So, when you go down some of these rabbit holes, like there's never enough. Like when you're in a player phase or a hustling phase in your life, it's like you start, getting women. It's like it's never enough. It's like a bottomless pit. Same thing when it comes down to money. So you might have somebody whose channel blows up to 500,000 subscribers, and now all of a sudden they're making $30,000 a month in ad revenue, and it's like shit. I want this money to keep coming in, so I don't even care what type of content I'm gonna make. I just want to make some content because I know somebody's gonna watch the shit. So it's like then they just start putting out anything that they feel like will have a little bit of buzz. Maybe they start doing gimmicks. Maybe they start doing things for clicks and start getting outside of themselves. And I think it's easier to be more authentic when the reward isn't as great.
Man, I don't know. I've always thought on like TikTok and stuff like that. I always thought it was, maybe I'm crazy, but I always just thought it's a big troll job. Basically, Chinese programming algorithm, basically who can make the biggest fool out of themselves, and just watch a bunch of people chasing their, you know, like all their likes going up. And it's like the bigger the fool you make out of yourself, the more appreciation you're gonna get. And it's so funny because people will do literally anything. Like even the people not even making money off. Like it's one thing too, people that are actually like harvesting this and turning a profit off of this. But for a lot of people, the social media literally turns into a heroin needle of validation. It's like making a complete fool out of yourself just to get a bunch of likes on the platform, when realistically it's like um I don't know. I think
Yeah,
maybe that's my cynical view, but I don't know. I'm just imagining like, some dude in, China writing the algorithm for what's going to get appreciated.
I
And
mean,
basically just
I
like,
mean, there are all these things are algorithm driven for sure. And one thing that I would say, um, one thing I would say as far as like that heroin needle drip for likes and invalidation is like I actually saw something that was pretty funny, and it was, man, I forget what this dude's name was. I think his name was, he was a comedian, and his name was like Hassan something. I forget exactly what the guy's name is, but he had like a comedy special, and I guess he was just talking about how like how he blew up on like Twitter or something like that, and it was like all through like controversial stuff, and he was saying like after he got that one like hit of validation from like all the likes and likes and all this people following him on Twitter, he was just like he couldn't get enough of it. So it was like he started to become a slave to the algorithm, or a slave to like getting likes and all the validation. So anything controversial he could do, he just started doing everything controversial, and everything he was doing was like political controversy. I think he ended up like talking about, I think, the Prince of Saudi Arabia or something like that, one of these countries in the Middle East. And then he ended up going to a consulate. I think I saw some special on Netflix about this, or on YouTube or something, about some reporter who got killed in the consulate of, or the embassy of one of these countries' embassies or whatever. And he was actually at that embassy the same day because he had said something controversial on Twitter. And then he ended up hearing the news, and he was like, oh shit, like I was doing all this to create all this controversy, and this dude actually got killed. And then he kept, but then he said he still didn't really like learn his lesson and kept going with the controversial stuff because he couldn't stop, because he wanted to get the likes and the shares and the comments and all that type of stuff. And then he said he ended up having, he had a daughter at the time and his wife, and he ended up getting a package in the mail, and somebody sent like a fake anthrax, and it got all over his daughter. So then he had to take her to the emergency room, and eventually they ended up finding out that it wasn't real anthrax. But at the end of the day, it scared him to the point where it's like, man, this just is not worth all this controversy and all this what do you call it, this external validation is not worth the safety of my family. And we got my mom in the chat. Real growth and development never plateaus. It has nothing to do with what others think of you. Your inner barometer is your true north. You can lie to the world, but you cannot lie to yourself. 100%. I definitely agree with that. As for jobs, they are what you do, not who you are. exactly. And Saudi Arabia. That's why I thought it was Saudi Arabia. But yeah, no, I think that we can lie to ourselves, and sometimes we do lie to ourselves subconsciously as well. It's like, or not subconsciously, we lie to ourselves consciously, but subconsciously we know that we're actually lying. But we cannot even know that we're lying to ourselves, because sometimes we can get into an energy of trying to make something happen so hard that we start being unauthentic. And I think that actually can come on the opposite end of the spectrum as well. Even when we're not getting the validation, even though we're not getting compensated heavily because of the work that we're doing, it can come on the opposite end of the spectrum as well when we're desperate. So that desperate energy is an energy that we don't want to get into as well, because a lot of times when we can get desperate, then we start doing things that are outside of our character because we're just trying to make something happen by any means necessary. And I could think of that in terms of, if you're desperate for money, you might go commit a crime, right? And then you end up suffering the consequences of committing a crime because you were so desperate to get money. But if you actually, kind of take a few steps back, try to see the forest through the trees, zoom out a little bit, you can kind of see what's worth doing something because you need money, or what's worth, what are the consequences to all your actions. And when it comes down to content creation in general, the way I look at it is like, the consequences of your actions is other people's perceptions of you, which may not be very important to you at the moment, but at the end of the day, sometimes potential employers are watching. Um, sometimes you might get into a relationship and you might say something or you might end up making some friends, and you might say something in your videos or on your social media posts, and somebody, is kind of scrolling through your timeline. They're like, what the hell is this dude talking about? I thought this guy was a good person, but he's talking some crazy stuff. And I think we've all been there, and we've all said things that we don't necessarily stand by to this day. That's just a part of personal growth in general.
Yeah, and I think too, like on the topic of kind of like the external versus internal, is like who better to judge your own character or judge yourself than you? It's like you're the one that's been with yourself for everything you've ever done, even if you might have been, half asleep during some of it. Who better to, um, you know, judge your character and judge the decisions that you're gonna make than yourself? And I think that's kind of like a big element of trust, right? Because you can, trust other people and other people's judgments, but it's like, can you trust your own judgment enough that you respect your own opinion, and you can actually make good decisions that you trust based on your instincts, because you're the one that's watched yourself go through different trials or challenges, and how you reacted, how you felt during that, and how you responded. I mean, that's one of the challenges I think I've actually faced, was like, I think there's been times in my life where I've been super happy with myself, and I feel like the external world wasn't giving me much validation. I feel like there's other times where the external world was telling me tons of positive things, but inside I was actually kind of disgusted with myself. I didn't like who I'd become. And I think, being true to yourself is actually chasing your own validation, even if it comes at the expense of being viewed worse by other people.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's kind of like an inner struggle that we all have, because at the end of the day, it's like, we can know that self validation is the best validation, but I think there's a certain aspect of us all that craves external validation at some point. You know what I mean? Like, we all crave external validation. It's like, we can lie to other people and say, "Oh, I don't care about what other people think here and there." There's somebody whose opinion that you care about, that you hold in high regard, whether that's your best friend, whether that's your mother, whether that's your father. You care about somebody's opinion, and you don't live in this world by yourself. So of course, you do care about the opinion of the people that you actually love and respect. But I actually want to go back to this comment my mom said about, as for jobs, they are what you do, not who you are. And I kind of wanted to touch on what Tracy had said earlier about appreciation. And you know, we can do certain jobs, and we can actually even do these jobs to the best of our ability, but we might not get the type of appreciation that we do, that we think that we deserve. And even if the job isn't something that we're super passionate about, I think the way that we do our job and the energy that we put into our job actually plays a role into our successes and other things that we do in our life as well. It's like, for instance, when I was working at United Airlines, I was working customer service, so I was dealing with customers. But I think that because I took certain things serious with my job when I was working there, it actually helped me. It just helped my communication out in general. Like, I became a better communicator. I became better at relaying messages to people. I became better at, conflict resolution. I became better with, kind of soft skills, being able to take the temperature of the room. I just noticed now that I noticed like a lot of people don't necessarily know how to read other people, and they might say something super offensive. And it's like, when you work around people that much, you almost develop a sixth sense to like, oh, how do I need to communicate this message to be effective? Not necessarily how do I need to communicate this message to get my point across, but how is this point that I'm making going to actually be effective? How can I tell this person in a way that they're actually going to understand, opposed to me just saying in a way that I think it makes sense? So these are definitely things that that come along with the territory of growth. But yeah, I mean, we started off this conversation about rejection and how to get the last laugh with rejection. But we'll probably end this video pretty soon. If anybody else has any questions, put them in the comment section. Again, before me and James cut out, I want to give you guys an opportunity to join the Growth Mastermind. Email me at travelstenics@yahoo.com. That link is in the description box below. Again, going over what the Growth Mastermind is. It's basically going to be a private chat, a private group where we go over topics that are going to help us all grow. We're all going to network. We've already got some people in the group already. We're probably going to have the first meeting next week. We're going to do assigned readings. I already have some books picked out. You guys can give your book recommendations as well. I already have some assigned mandatory fitness requirements, not necessarily that you need to do right now, but things that we're going to do, like, just simple things that I want everybody to get in the habit of doing, taking a certain amount of steps every day, getting up in the morning, maybe doing a set of push-ups or squats or something like that. And these are things that we're going to hold each other accountable for. Also going to have a group chat on WhatsApp, share ideas, throughout the week, as well as, maybe if you guys hit a PR and you guys take videos of your workouts like me and James, you send that through the group chat. Because the thing is one thing I noticed about me and James, and I know this is the case for James as well. When James hits a PR, when he hits a new movement, it automatically gives me so much energy that I want to just stop what I'm doing. I want to go work out and I want to go hit a PR myself. And I know that the same thing happens when I send James a video of me getting a PR. I know he wants to. I know it. He's told me on multiple occasions, like, man, fuck, I want to go to the gym right now. I want to go knock the block off a workout too. And yeah, so that's definitely something, man. We got my boy G in the house, Success Chasing Series. If you guys are new to the channel, G's been on my channel multiple times. And he's actually been in these chats multiple times. What's up, fellas? Nice chat. Looking forward to the mastermind for sure. So G will be in there too. So guys, it's going to be a good group. Like, I want to just touch on G's story a little bit, actually. And this is a type of growth that's possible. G got out of prison, I don't know how many years ago. G, you might want to put it in the chat, but I'm pretty sure it was about 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, something like that. And the amount of growth that he's had from the time that he's got out of prison, he literally reinvented himself. Got a certificate in, where there was a high barrier to entry as a construction inspector, making good money now. And he's definitely went from, he got out of prison, was working at a grocery store, Whole Foods. And now he's, actually started a career, and he kind of took little steps. And I'm pretty sure if you ask G, and we'll probably talk about this in the Growth Mastermind, about how G just laid a brick down, brick by brick, study for an hour a day, work 2 jobs, put in a certain amount of hours, save a little bit of money, take a certain test. Okay, got into this new job, then got into his apprenticeship. So, these type of things, they happen they might not happen overnight, but your growth, once it compounds, can turn out to be something huge. And Art says, I'm going to email you on Monday, Tuesday about the mastermind group. Also, have you guys done I'm pretty sure it means prolonged fast. Yeah, I've done prolonged fast before. I did a 48-hour fast one time, which was pretty nuts. You know, the funny thing about prolonged fast, I know 48 hours isn't necessarily the longest fast in the world, but I did it pretty much just for discipline purposes. And I would say the hardest, I remember this fast like very vividly. And at like hour 21, which is not even really a difficult hour for me to get to because I used to do 24-hour fasts all the time. But at hour 21, I think the mental aspect of it was getting to me, and I was like really having a hard time. Like, man, I want to eat something, and I feel weak. I remember the first day, because after the first 24 hours, I went to the park and I did a workout. I felt weak. I was like mentally, I just thought like, oh man, my workout's not that good. But then I remember getting through the entire next day. I went on a hike, and then the next morning I woke up and I was just like full of energy. And like my next day, I literally had like one of the best workouts I'd had in like a month. And it just shows you the power of the mind. Like once you break through that mental barrier, like there's unlimited potential beyond that. And calisthenics journey, the mastermind sounds quite interesting. I'll see what I can do by myself, but I think I'm really not progressing how I want regards to what I do. I'll try to join later if possible. Cool idea for sure. Yeah, man. There's no pressure on anybody to join right now, but we're gonna have this mastermind going, and this is something that we want to grow and we want to turn it into something huge because the potential that everybody has in it to be a resource to one another. Like I said, there's some people who are going to come in as high performers who want to get better, and there's some people who are probably going to come in thinking, maybe I'm not even sniffing my potential, and I just want some guidance to start performing better. And you never know, the people who come in that maybe haven't accomplished as much might end up, in a year or two from now, blowing past everybody in the group. And that's the way things work.
And I'm so excited to start this up because I just already know what's possible with just a year of this. It's like even if you look at G's trajectory in 2.5 or 3 years, it's like it really shows you what's possible. It's like you keep on laying down these bricks. Like that to me is like the most exciting part about this is literally just watching how people are going to be blowing their own mind. Like they're going to be doing some stuff that they never thought was even possible. And it's like, I don't know. I think that's going to be the biggest reward from this whole thing. It's like, I actually think one of the things we actually need to make sure we do is actually document. Because I think a lot of times when you get so lost in the process, it's like, we were kind of talking about this before. It's like, you start taking things for granted, like, and then you look back a year and you're like, oh shit, like, a year ago I was struggling to hit 3 handstand push-ups, and now it's like I'm getting pissed off when I hit a 13 piece, and that kind of stuff happens too. So it's like, I think one of the things we have to do in this mastermind group is really kind of like document, like, where are you, physically, mentally, emotionally, career-wise, relationship-wise, wherever you are, and kind of give yourself kind of that, mark where you're at. And then, when we look back, a year from now, it's like, I think it's going to be mind-blowing, the kind of transformations that are going to happen.
I also think like another thing that we might be underestimating too is like how much me and you are actually going to grow from this as well. So it's like you guys, like I said, this isn't any channel where I'm like just talking at you guys. Like I want to build a community, and like you guys are helping me grow as well. Sometimes I see comments in the comment section and I'm like, man, that was pretty insightful. And that's a perspective that I didn't necessarily look at. I mean, sometimes I look at comments in the comment section, I'm like, what the hell is this dude thinking? But at the same time, just as many times I'll look at it and be like, okay, that was a nice perspective that somebody dropped, So, it's good to see everybody else's perspective in these things. And Ganjen 88, I fasted for 60 hours. Then my mind went ballistic. Yeah, now these long fasts aren't any joke. So you just got to kind of keep tabs on them. But guys, that's it for the live stream today. Again, join the Patreon, www.patreon.com/growththroughcalisthenics. Only $5 a month if you guys want to support. Like the video on the way out. Me and James will be back with another live stream very soon, maybe tomorrow if James got time. But like I said, Growth Mastermind starts next week. Email us at travelsinks@yahoo.com if you want to join. Peace.